Welcome to Transform and Transformational, a Teach Beyond podcast. I'm Kian.
And I'm Heather. We're here to explore what it means to be transformed in our own lives and how that overflows to living lives of transformational impact in our communities.
This week is our final Work and Calling episode of the season. Work and Calling is our monthly series where we get to hear from a Teach Beyond member about their story and how God is at work in the work that they do.
Today, we're talking with Katherine Haschig, who currently lives in South Africa and serves with Teach Beyond Sparrow Project, but she'll also be sharing about the other roles and experiences she has had.
Katherine graduated from Liberty University in 2021 with a degree in elementary education, which has led her from student teaching abroad to teaching grade 4 full-time, to now equipping national teachers in their own classrooms.
Let's go over to the conversation with Katherine now. Welcome to the podcast, Katherine.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Katherine, we are excited to have you here and excited to hear your story. And as we get started, we know you've lived in more than one country. You've traveled to a number of different countries, and we'll get into all of that more. But what would you say is one thing that's the most surprising thing you've experienced while traveling or living abroad?
Yeah, I would say when you're living abroad, it's crazy how new things just become normal so quickly. So it was really great when I was living in West Africa to have some family visit to realize, oh, yeah, these things that have become so normal really are not normal. And it's not how I grew up. Yeah. So I think that just you can quickly adapt to a new area.
Hmm. That's such an interesting observation. And it certainly helps when someone who doesn't live that everyday life with you comes into your world and you realize what is different and how to help them assimilate into it for a short visit too. Interesting. Nice. Well, you mentioned having formerly lived in West Africa. You're currently living in South Africa. Can you tell us briefly about the different roles you've had with Teach Beyond and kind of walk us through what that has looked like?
For sure. So initially, I began my time overseas in Dakar, Senegal, in West Africa. I went to Dakar Academy initially as a student teacher, and I was there for a little over 3 months. Doing my student teaching there, and then eventually decided to stay and taught grade 4
Hmm.
there for a couple of years. So that was my main role, was a grade 4 teacher. But of course, you get roped into different things like
Yeah.
helping with service trips, and I coached soccer when I was there too. So
Nice.
it was really fun and really great to work with the secondary students because I taught grade 4. So that was a really fun way just to connect with other students in the school, to be a part of the community in that way. Really is a whole well-rounded job title. So Dakar Academy is a school mostly for missionary students, missionary kids. That's how it started. And there are 3 different campuses around Senegal, just reaching now all different types of families, all different types of students. Yeah, but it's an incredible school. So I really enjoyed my time there. And now, my official titles, I'm the Associate Director of the Sparrow Project. And this is a teacher training program that really reaches under resourced schools and provides, teacher training and teacher education to these teachers.
That is so interesting that you started with student teaching, and I would love to hear more about that. And let's go back even further. We'd love to hear about your growing up experience and how that played into your sense of calling to missions and even looking overseas for your student teaching. How did all of those things work together?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I grew up in a Christian home with parents who do love the Lord and really made faith a priority in the life of our family growing up. So, I would say it all really started then, but this was never my plan to be where I am now. I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. That was always something I wanted to do since I was like 5 years old. I would make my sisters play school with me. My parents would make them play school with me. I remember being in like the 3rd grade and thinking, oh, my teacher did this. Like, I'm not going to do this when I'm a teacher. So I've definitely always wanted to be a teacher. That's been in my heart for forever. But living overseas was not really something I envisioned or planned on doing. And it all just really happened so naturally. So I feel like God is just really carrying me through every season because it's
Mm,
never what I expected. So when the opportunity came for student teaching the last semester of university, we could do it. You could really do it anywhere. You could do it near the college, or you could do it back in your hometown. You could just, as long as you were able to plan that out. And so, yeah, I knew I knew another girl who had done hers in Ethiopia through Liberty University, where I went to school. And I was like, wow, that just seems really interesting. Like, I don't know, something really piqued my interest there. And I think the part that I really loved about it is that it was really short term, but not so short term that it was only a week or 2 weeks. It was like 3 to 4 months. So I could really see, okay, what is educational missions actually like? What does this look like? And could I see myself doing this? Yeah, so that's how I initially got to Dakar Academy.
That's really interesting how seeing someone else go and do that or having experience doing that kind of opened up the way of, oh, maybe that's something that I might be interested in doing myself. So tell us a little bit about your student teaching experience. What was it like? What did you learn during that time?
Yeah, so my student teaching experience was wonderful. I really arrived in Senegal, though, not knowing anything about West Africa because I was initially supposed to go to a different school. And then just a couple of weeks before, my placement changed to Dakar Academy. And they were
Wow.
like, yes,
Wow.
we'll take you in. And we have a
Yeah.
teacher that you can teach in her classroom. So I kind of arrived into Senegal kind of in a whirlwind, it felt like, just initially getting there. But it was a really great time. I really loved being there, loved being at the school, and really learned so much. Definitely learned a whole lot about teaching. You know, you're actually for the first time in the classroom, you get a chance to actually teach. Yeah, which was wonderful, and I had a great mentor teacher as well. But what I really loved about it is that I learned so much about missions as well. So I
Mm,
lived with a couple of other girls who were not a part of the school community. So I got to go with them to their different ministries and see what
interesting.
they were doing and how they were spreading the gospel. And yeah, I feel like I was really opened up to a lot of different avenues of mission work and got to really see what people were doing all throughout Senegal to spread the gospel. So it was definitely information overload. I was just learning so much all the time about teaching
Mhm.
and about living overseas and yeah, about mission work. And yeah, it was really incredible. But I think one of the biggest takeaways is understanding the importance of education for missionary children, which I had heard a little bit about before, but then again, like I said before, I wasn't really planning on doing this. So I wasn't super involved in like a missionary community before, wasn't really plugged into that aspect in my church. That wasn't really a focus of mine. And so yeah, I was really opened up to this whole idea of, wow, this education for these students is actually so important. It's such a big puzzle piece for the gospel and missions work
Yeah.
as a whole. And at Takar Academy, they have a big boarding program. So many students are boarding there. So their parents and families can be out in these more remote places and they can be ministering to the people while these kids have an education in the city. So
Mhm.
yeah, I
Mhm.
really learned about the incredible blessing of that and got to hear so many testimonies from the parents and families that were just so thankful for the school and thankful for the teachers. Yeah, and just really loved that their kids had a place to go to school there.
Can you tell us more about what some of the parents were doing? And you mentioned even the women you were living with had other roles aside from being at the school or, they didn't have kids at the school. So what was some of the work that was happening there in West Africa?
Yeah, so people were doing all different kinds of things. My roommates are working at an English center, and so they would do English camps, and I got to be a part of that with them as well, which was cool. Some other people were running vocational schools or like vocational training centers for different people. Some were just helping in different like medical clinics or doing it that way. Yeah, so it was just a whole range of different ministry opportunities there.
That's so interesting. And it sounds like your eyes are open to this whole new world of experiences and potential futures. So, what went into your thought of going overseas for a short period is one thing, but moving there is a whole different thing? So, what went into that decision to actually apply to go there long term?
Well, what I loved about this student teaching opportunity is that it was short term. So 3 to 4 months wasn't a huge commitment. I figured,
Mhm.
okay, the Lord has opened this door, but if I hate it, I can do it for 3 months. If I really if I
Mhm.
don't love this, I'm not committing my life to living in Senegal forever. So we can just see
Mhm.
how it goes.
Yeah.
And I was there for a month, and the principal at the school asked me to stay. And I was like, haha, I'm definitely not going to stay, but thank you. This is just a great student teaching opportunity. I will not be staying. So then as time goes on, they're asking me again, like, Catherine, you should really consider staying and teaching here. And so as time went on, I also could not picture myself leaving. I was like,
Mm.
every day, I was just thinking, I cannot imagine leaving here in a month and never coming back. Like, I couldn't imagine leaving. And so a lot of prayer went into it for sure. A lot of pros and cons lists, a lot of talking this out. A lot of quiet with the Lord. But yeah, I was just really felt like my hands were just really open to the Lord and where He had me going next. So I was just graduating from university and didn't have the next, 4 years planned out for my life that you normally do in school. You have, your 4 years of high school, your 4 years of college, and then,
Yeah.
okay, I was at this pivotal time where I could really do anything. So yeah, after so much prayer and thought going into this, it really just felt like the perfect place to start my teaching career. And just so many things lined up so well. I had my same roommates. I knew where I was going to be living the next year if I stayed. I was able to
Mm.
teach grade 4, and my student teaching was grade 3. So I taught the same exact group of
Wow.
students again. I had some great teaching mentors that were there. It was just like, wow, this seemed like a seamless transition into this next step. And I felt so much peace about it. So, yeah, after that, decided to stay.
That's so interesting because I feel like it's pretty common in student teaching or teaching internships that that might end up turning into a full-time job. We often hear about that, but you don't necessarily think about that in an international context. So it's neat that for you that had the same benefit, that it was familiar, you already knew a lot of the staff. And of course, in a community like that, there's the element of housing and cultural adjustment that is a huge help. So that's great, Catherine.
Um, it sounds like you had a progression from not going to stay there long term to thinking about it more and more. I'm curious about your family because it's one thing to say goodbye as your daughter goes overseas for 3 months, but then I don't know if you told them at the beginning as you started to think about it, or just at the end of, hey, I'm going to stay or I'm going to come back. How did your family and your friends and your church take that news?
Yeah, they were so supportive. I'm really thankful to have really supportive family and friends who are so encouraging. But I think the biggest comment I got back was, "Wow, we're so surprised." And I always came back with, "Me too." I am just as surprised as you are right now that I'm telling you I'm staying. Like it was not I'm not like a super adventurous person, kind of really like my comfort zone. Like this was really shocking for everyone, including myself. So really cool to see how God was just really growing and stretching me. But yeah, really thankful to have so many supportive family members and friends. And definitely also recognizing the sacrifice it is for them as well. Having someone in their lives who, yeah, decided, well, I'm actually going to live 5,000 miles away from you now for the next couple of years, or perhaps indefinitely, and kind of just dropping that there. So, yeah, I recognize it's a big sacrifice for them too. But I think what was also really beneficial in this time was my sister had lived in Germany for a couple of years. And so I felt like we knew as a family how to do this with someone living far away. I was like, okay, we can make this work. And then even having my couple of months in Senegal was really just preparing me for that. Like already kind of wrestling through, okay, how do I keep up these friendships? Like what does that look like? And how does that change now that you're no longer living with these people in college? So that was really helpful too, then staying in Senegal more long term.
That is a point in life when all your peers are also doing something different, even if they're going to stay in the same town where your university is. It's still moving out, off campus or starting something new. So it is a big time of change already, but certainly an even bigger change when there's that time difference or cross cultural element. So Yeah, that's great. So, what was different for you going from being a student teacher to being a full-time teacher at the same school? What did that look like? How did that shift work out?
Yeah. I honestly feel like there was not that much of a difference. Student teaching is quite a lot, so you're really full-time teaching.
Hmm.
I would say there is definitely more planning that goes into, when you're a full-time teacher instead of student teaching. There is more accountability for the planning as well. But then also
Mhm.
just nice because you have more freedom to set up your classroom exactly how you want and put the routines in place that
Mhm.
that you that you want to have. So I really, really enjoyed creating that whole classroom environment for me and my students.
Catherine, you mentioned you are now living in South Africa and working with the Sparrow Project, which is a teacher training program. How did you decide to do something different, and why the Sparrow Project?
Yeah, so I've actually thought about this recently, and I cannot remember how I first heard about the Sparrow Project. It had to be something from Teach Beyond, maybe a social media page or an email. Somehow I heard about this, and I saw this video of talking about the Sparrow Project. And I was like, this is what I really have a passion for. Just my favorite aspect of it is about equipping the national teachers and the national staff in these places. And so when I heard about what was happening with the Sparrow Project, I was like, I have to be a part of this. I definitely have to be involved in this in some way. And so again, like just felt like a new season, really open hands to God, praying about, okay, what does this look like in this new season? Like what's next? Yeah, so then just after different conversations with different people and time in prayer. Yeah, the doors just opened again to continue to work with the Sparrow Project. And yeah, that's what I do now.
Catherine, you mentioned spending time in prayer at both of those pivotal decision points of deciding to stay full time at Dakar and then in making this transition to a totally new ministry. What does that look like for you to sense peace about doing something new? Or, what does it look like to listen to the Lord's leading in that?
Yeah, I think that just so easily for myself could get caught up in the opinions of others and the advice from other people, and you're just getting so much input from the outside that just really taking time, quiet time to just sit with the Lord and really process through these things was just really important to me. And making sure that, yeah, this is something that I really do feel like God is leading me into. And that's what was really important to me in that.
You mentioned earlier about how you were excited about training national teachers. Can you tell me what interests you about that? What makes you excited about it?
Yeah, so when I was living in Senegal, I really just, like I said before, learned so much. But I had quite an international classroom, which was really, really interesting and learned so much from my students, and they learned so much from each other. But also recognize that there were some barriers there with students speaking different languages. I had one student who only spoke Korean. I did not speak Korean, I only speak English. And so just like a lot of challenges there culturally and language barriers. And yeah, just really seeing the importance and the impact that a teacher from the same culture as the student can have. Because at the school we had some national Senegalese teachers, and just seeing there's a different connection between a Senegalese teacher and a Senegalese student, just understanding that cultural background and the language and just those nuances that you just can't explain. So that's the part I really love about that. And I just think relationships are so important in teaching. And I always told the parents this at parent teacher conferences. Like, I was just so thankful to be in these children's lives and feeling like I really do have a big impact. Like, they spend more time at school than they even do their homes sometimes. And often the students stayed after school for so many hours. So, like, really feeling that weight. Um, yeah. And so seeing that the relationship between the teacher and the students is so important, and really seeing how teachers from that same background can have such an amazing impact in the students' lives. Not to say that those from a different culture can't, but really just recognizing the amazing impact that they can have being from the same background.
Okay, so you've been working with Sparrow Project for a little while now. Where has that taken you recently? What does it look like kind of day to day or bigger trips and things? Can you flesh that out a little bit more?
For sure. So recently, it's taken me a lot of places. I've had a couple of very busy months of travel, but it really looks different, I would say, every day. I came full time into this role less than a year ago, and I feel like each month we kind of have been having a different focus, just as far as what needs to be done and what our goal is. Yeah, to continue to move the project along. So it really looks different all the time. I do spend quite a lot of time just on my computer and meetings, connecting with people. I spent a good chunk of time this past November, December, January working on finishing up our curriculum with our great curriculum team for the Sparrow project. So, a lot of hours on meetings just trying to finalize the curriculum. But yeah, most recently I've traveled to a couple of different countries. I was in Tanzania about a month ago, and I was just in Zambia this past week, and just being able to be a part of the trainings in those places. And that's really my favorite part, getting to be with the teachers, getting to take school visits, see their schools, see what they're like, and yeah, just train the teachers with this curriculum we have that we feel like is really super transformational and can really, yeah, spark that transformation in these teachers, their schools, and their community. So it has been a busy couple of months, but it's going to continue to look different as time goes on. And the goal is really to equip these facilitators for the Sparrow Project in the countries that they're in. And then we can kind of take a step back and we say, okay, you now have these tools and we want you to continue to use them and train up other teachers. And we're now going to bring this somewhere else. So, yeah, I love that part too. We're equipping these, not only the teachers, but the national facilitators. And we say, okay, this is yours now. It's your responsibility. Continue to spread this. And we're going to take a step back.
It really is a multiplied impact then that,
Mhm.
contributing your bit then helps them to take the next step and help it to go even further. That's great. Where have you seen your giftings, your past experiences, your strengths, either like in a way that you expected or surprisingly playing into this work, in the role that you play on the team or the perspective
Mhm.
you bring?
Yeah. I think what's really beneficial, one thing is that I was just in university a couple of years ago. It has not been that long. And so
Right.
as we were writing this curriculum, feeling like so many of these new teaching ideas and strategies were so fresh in my mind. And
Mm.
this curriculum is very fun. Everyone is like up and moving. It's super active. It really gets everyone engaged. And I feel like a lot of the ideas came from the things I learned in university just recently about, as you know, teaching's always evolving and changing, and they're always coming out with, new studies and new research about the next best thing. And so I feel like I have had the privilege to take yeah, what I just learned sort of recently and add that into part of our curriculum, which is great.
I love it. This is probably isn't a fair question based on everything you just talked about: student teaching, full time teaching in Dakar, and now working with Sparrow Project. But I would love a story or two about where you've seen God at work in your ministry, from really any one of those areas.
Just sum it up.
Yeah, it is hard.
There are so many stories. Yeah, there are so many amazing stories to share, and I just feel honored to, yeah, be able to hear all of these stories. I really should write them down because there are so many amazing stories from people and how just God is working in their lives. And I think what I love the most is seeing how God works just differently in people's lives, still having the same impact, but just, yeah, God is seen differently in different people's lives. Um, Most recently, I was in Zambia this past week, and we had two of our cohorts graduating, our first ones from the Sparrow Project, the whole 6-unit curriculum, which was really fun to be a part of and to see them at this graduation ceremony. But we had asked them to share, they had to do this final project and share about how they have been transformed and their schools have been transformed through what they've learned over the past 2 years. And we just heard some really, really incredible stories about, yeah, what God is doing and how he's changing the hearts of these teachers. But one teacher shared about how her school looked before the Sparrow Project training and then after. And she had this whole chart of her school before and after. And the differences were incredible. It was like a totally different school. She shared stories about like how they would discipline the students and what they do now, and how they would like welcome the students and what they do now, and just such a demeanor shift in how the teachers are really approaching teaching. And yeah, their school just seems totally transformed through this, which is, as you know, it's really the goal here, especially with Teach Beyond, transformational education. This is the goal, but really wonderful to see that. And I think it makes all those hours on the computer and just in meetings so worth it when you hear stories like this about how these schools and students and families are totally transformed by what we're sharing with them. And it's ultimately just the Lord in their lives, which is so encouraging.
Mhm. Wow, there's so much to take in here. And this is another big question, but we always like to ask what's something that you would want to tell your past self with the perspective that you have now? I'm guessing that even a few years ago, you couldn't have imagined being involved in the Sparrow Project or doing the type of work that you're doing now. So, what's something you would say to your past self?
Yeah, that is a good question. Yeah, I would just say don't plan the future. Oh no, but we have no idea what the ways God is going to lead us and guide us and direct us. And I think what I found to be really beneficial is just, yeah, being open to how God is going to move my life and change my life, and just not having such a strong grip on my future and what that's going to look like. Which has been, yeah, really beneficial. And just being like, okay, God, here I am. I'm here to serve you in whatever capacity that looks like.
We hear that theme a lot, Catherine, of letting go and not having quite a firm grip. And it's a reminder we all need because as we look into the future from here, of course, your story is still being written. This is just up until this point. There's so much more that we don't know what's up ahead, and keeping that frame of mind as we move forward in trust and continuing to walk with the Lord. So thanks so much for sharing with us about this. We've loved this conversation and just appreciate hearing how the Lord has brought you to this point and how he's at work.
Yeah, thank you so much. We have one final question before we let you go, and that's what we like to ask all of our guests, and that's what's one thing that's changing your life right now. So this can be something big or small, something serious or something light. You can kind of take it whichever direction you want. I'll go first, and then Heather, and then you can go last. So you get a little bit of time to think about it. But what's changing my life this week is me and my family just started doing geocaching, which, if you
Mm,
know about it, there's a
yeah.
website with a bunch of GPS coordinates for little treasures you can go treasure hunting with. So we've just started doing it, and there's a bunch in our city. And after you do a few of them, you're like, I want to make my own. So that
Yes.
could be in the future. But for now, we've been trying to find the ones around our area.
That is so fun. My family used to do letterboxing, which is really similar
Yes.
to geocaching, and it's very fun. Apparently, we have a hobbies theme going on this week because mine is, and Catherine will have to see if you continue that. No pressure, but mine is that what's changing my life is that I've been playing the game of Wingspan, and I don't know if you guys have played this. It's kind of a more complicated game, so it once you learn it, it's like you might as well play it as much as you can because you took the time to learn how to play it. But there's an online version and an in-person version, and the in-person one takes a long time to set up and kind of lay out, but it goes a lot quicker online. So that's been fun to be able to play with people who are local as well as people who are further away. What about you, Catherine?
So, one thing for me would be my Kindle. I just got this
Mm,
Kindle recently, and it's amazing because, like I said before, I'm traveling all the time, and you can't just have a local library that's not really super accessible. So, having
yeah.
my Kindle is it's really great. And sometimes I'm in like reading moods and I read a lot of books at a time, and sometimes I don't read for months, but I'm really loving my Kindle right now.
Are you a person who said you would like never get a Kindle and you like the feel of a physical book?
Yes, well, I just never felt the need. I was like, why would I ever
Sure.
need a Kindle? I have my library, but not
Right.
anymore.
Not anymore. Yes, that's great. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Catherine. We really appreciate hearing from you and learning from you. And thanks for the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to share my story a little bit.
For our weekly spotlight, we are focusing on student teaching.
Hey everyone, it's Catherine. If you're interested in doing your student teaching overseas just like I did, check out Teach Beyond. It's a great way to test out living overseas and what educational missions is like. Visit teachbeyond.org/go or click on the link in the show notes.
It was so great to hear some of Catherine's story today.
I love that at the beginning of our conversation with Catherine, she mentioned how the most interesting thing to her about living overseas is having family visit and realize all of the things that used to be unique to her have now become commonplace and just seeing how far she had come. And then at the very end of our conversation, Catherine mentioned what she would tell her past self is to hold the future loosely. And I feel like that is so much the case in all the areas of our lives. We can't imagine what the future might look like, but then when you're living in it, you look back and see what God has done and just be amazed at how you got here.
Yeah, there's so much that we can all relate to in that, I'm sure, to look back and then look ahead, recognizing we don't know what is to come. But it's exciting to think that the Lord does, and we can trust Him with that. Well, Catherine, Kian, and I all serve with an organization called Teach Beyond. As you've heard, education plays a big role in missions, and Teach Beyond is a part of that.
As followers of Jesus, TeachMan is a global community providing transformational education services as part of God's ongoing mission to transform individuals and communities into all He intends.
Want to learn more and get involved? Visit teachbeyond.org or follow us on social media.
To help more people find the podcast and hear about Teach Beyond, we'd love it if you would leave a rating or review and share the show with a friend. Be sure you're subscribed or following the show on the platform where you listen so you never miss an episode.
And as always, you can reach us at podcast.teachbeyond.org. We'll see you next week.
The mystery word for this week is Teach Beyond.